Let's see what happens now. Hey folks, Moose here. How you doing? Hopefully you can see me now. I see that I now have a connection. I've been here talking all to myself for the last 2 minutes. Had a great time. I hope you enjoyed your spare time. Hey, catch up. What you missed in the last 2 minutes? Well, Brett and I are here in beautiful Zephyr Hills, Florida, going on day 3 working on our documentary project. It's been absolutely amazing stuff. How amazing? Well, first day we shot over 550 gigabytes of video. Today I know we have over a total over a terabyte. And if the lights go all of a sudden, that's because we have been busy plugging in. We have not one or two, but we have 17 batteries right now that are plugged in charging for all the camera bodies, all the recording units, all the lights. It's just like multi-sockets, multi-plugs, electricity everywhere. And if I get a little goofy, well, what can I say? I got 4 hours of sleep last night. Brent got 3, for example. It's great stuff. We're keeping real busy. You might notice that I'm also a little crispy looking. Yeah, we've been out in the sun working on that C-47, shooting, and a lot of time wrenching. So it's been really great. So let me go check in the chat, see what's happening. I see friends are here. Hey, Eric, good to see you. David, howdy. Tammy, hey, thanks for coming by. So at this point, the only thing I want to start off with is the fact that I just tonight finished my first 24-hour time lapse with the D850, and I'm here to tell you it went really well. First and foremost, one warning I want to show you. So you can see I have the grip on here, right? Well, the grip makes the camera just a tad taller in my think tank. And I wasn't really thinking. It's just tall enough that the zipper on the flap gave my D850 an owie. So it's actually a tad taller than the D5. I know that. I've talked about it. I didn't think about it. It was in my think tank. That zipper right there. Something got put on top of my bag and owie. But guess what? Not a big deal. This baby did a beautiful job with a 24-hour time lapse. So, hey Karen, thanks for coming by. Coming in, saying hello, I should say. Like I said, not much sleep. I might be sounding goofy tonight. Anyway, the time lapse. So the D850 does a time lapse that goes for 8 hours. And with the grip, the MB-D18 on there, the 2 batteries, it'll do the whole 8 hours. The thing is, somebody has to be there to switch out batteries. So what we did is we spent all night at the airport, and at I think it was 12:30 this morning, swapped out the batteries, and then we came back, slept for a little bit, chargers and batteries and chargers, and we zipped back out for sunrise to make sure the front element was clean because of the dew, changed batteries, so we actually got a full 24 hours, which is 3 8-hour sequences, and they look really cool. So if you don't know how to do that, don't know the settings, tonight might be the night to ask. Well, let's see me right off the bat. Does anybody have any questions about settings? I'm not seeing any questions. Hey, you guys are seeing me, right? I'm not just broadcasting out to... I've got a yellow light here, which indicates there could be a problem. Anybody seeing me? Anybody talking to me? Could someone post something on the chat there so I know you're seeing me? Please. Please? I know there's going to be a buffer. I am seeing... hello, Richard. Hey. Can somebody tell me if you're actually seeing me pretty please? I'm getting lights here like I am going down. Thank you, Carol. Okay, so, Dennis. First question, when shooting aviation at very slow shutter speeds on very bright day, would you use an ND filter or polarizer or L shutter setting? So no, I don't do any of those things. Most of the time, shooting at ISO 100, You're going to dial in a shutter speed perhaps of, maybe as low as a 40th a second. And then with the 80 to 400 or the 7200 f4, you go to f32 and you're fine. So I've never used a filter for slowing down the shutter speed in that scenario at an air show. Let's see here. I'm not sure what L shutter setting, what that you mean by that L shutter setting, Dennis. So you might re-ask that to sit there and so I understand what you're asking. Boy, there must be a real lag because all of a sudden I see a bunch of things coming up on the chat for my questions for a few minutes ago. So I'll have to keep that in mind. There's that big a lag. I do have 2 yellow lights. It says my health stream here is really kind of weak. So apologies for that. And you might see me with kind of a yellow color cast. That's the kind of lights I have in here. I try to clean up the color as best I could. And so let's talk about color and color settings right now for a second. First and foremost, you need to make sure you remember that the information I'm giving you here is what I use personally. All right, it's what I have come to know and use in all my years of photography to deliver the images to my clients and to tell a story I want to tell. And I push myself, as I've written many times, to get it right in the camera. So color is really an important part of that. So I'm always going to have the color space to Adobe RGB. I want to have as much data that comes through that lens captured by that sensor. So I'm going to use Adobe RGB color space. And I'm always going to sit there and deal with the white balance. I don't just let it randomly go, and I don't sit there and deal with it in post and to fix it or correct it. Now, I know I get a lot of flack, and it's really confusing stuff, so not understanding it makes sense to me. But all I can tell you, this is how I deal with it, okay? This is how I shoot and how I think about it, and how after all these years, I'm still continually delivering the quality that allows me to have magazine covers and books and large prints and actually make money from my photography from clients over and over again, which I think is really important. Having repeat customers says a lot, not just about you as a photographer, but as a person who tells stories succinctly with the same quality over and over again, which is important. So I'm setting my white balance. So white balance can be very, very confusing. And so white balance, I have a general rule of thumb when you're starting to learn white balance. And that is I use auto white balance all the time except for I see red in the sky. And then I put it to cloudy. And understand that cloudy, that setting, actually represents a number. So that cloudy symbol represents 6,000 Kelvin. Now, I know people talk about the raw and all that stuff, and that's fine. If people can deal with this the way they want. But there's 2 things going on here. It's really important. First of all is the information that the sensor is taking in and it's writing to that instruction set. The instruction set you know of as all those sliders in Lightroom and Adobe Camera Raw. Well, those sliders are, you're literally manipulating the instruction set that is created by the camera, by the manufacturer. That's where, those people just didn't say, oh, what if I make this slider? What will do the picture? They're actually tapping that instruction set. The other thing that's very important to understand about color is this stuff here. The way your visual memory takes in information and then relates to what you see. So to be as faithful as possible and not break pixels, I think it's very important to get it right in the camera. So those are 2 important settings to start with. So I see that Dennis has sit there and says L is the shutter setting lower than the lowest native. Okay, you talking about ISO? Because my camera doesn't have an L. It has a T for time, but my Nikons don't have an L. And IE 100, that's not, okay, there you go. Oh, ASA. Now, Dennis, when you say ASA, you're dating yourself, buddy. I'm just here to tell you, it's all the young kids say ISO. But no, I don't never drop into L1 or L any of the other Ls for air show shooting aircraft going by to blur the props. Now, shooting with the 105-1.4 or the 24-1.4, which I use a lot. If you saw the blog post I put up today, for example, when I'm working on these projects and I'm doing a lot of stuff outdoors as well as indoors, I depend on those 1.4 lenses, and there are times when I go outside that noon hour and I'm shooting and the aircraft is basically white. I'm going to sit there and put it in L1 so I don't have 8,000 sit there blinking at me because there's so much light. But for shooting aircraft to blur a prop, I've never had to deal with that. I'm always in shutter priority. I select the shutter speed I want, and then it's going to deal with the f-stop. And like I mentioned, those two lenses go down to f32, so I'm golden. You shoot large format 8x10. You shoot air shows and planes going by with a large format camera. Dude, you're good. Just carrying it to the flight line would kill me. And then, film holders. Woo! I mean, 2 shots. I mean, technically 1 shot when they go by, because I guess you could flip it fast. And the dust, cleaning out all those holders. Hey, rock on, man. That's hard work. My good friend Roger Peterson, he used to tell some really great stories, and some of them started off the days when he shot with a speed graphic. And for you people who don't know what a speed graphic is, it's a 4x5 camera, and it had 2 shots. You had a film holder, a sheet of film on one side and a sheet of film on the other side. So you'd put it in, pull out the dark slide, take a picture, put the dark slide back in, pull it out, turn it over, pull out the dark slide, take a picture, put the dark slide, and you're done. You just shot your whole roll of 2 clicks. A lot of work, let alone the looking down, focusing, bellows, all the rest of that stuff. So I remember how excited he was when we had the thirst exposure roll, because he used to shoot with just 2. Okay, David, hey, thanks for joining us. Okay. Sorry, my eyes are just blurry, so give me a second. Have been meaning to ask, how do you digitally catalog your wildlife, i.e. by date, location, species? I'm assuming you're talking about filing. I don't catalog. Catalog in the biological science world is not a Lightroom catalog, so I don't like that term because it doesn't fit with what I'm doing. So when it comes to filing, I'll answer your question 2 ways. First, all of this is also on my website, which includes all my alphanumeric codes and how everything is broken down by groups and subgroups. So it's all there for you, okay? But basically, for my critters, there's 1 set for mammals, 1 set for birds. And the biggest reason I have those 2 broken apart is because of the fact that I want to have the alphanumeric code. I need each species to have a unique alphanumeric code. So for copyright registration, that's important. Also for invoicing, the most important reason. After that, the mammals and birds are kind of done 2 different ways. Mammals, because in North America, I think almost 300 species of North American mammals. That's not a whole lot, right? So they're just alphabetic, right? Alaskan moose is going to be top of the list. Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep near the bottom. So it's alphabetical. So birds are different. The birds will be under family, like raptors, hummingbirds, gulls and terns, perching birds. And then under that will be subfolders alphabetically, the species names. And then for it comes to actual filing, you could say the oldest picture will be the first one, the newest picture will be the last one in the file. And that's the exact same filing system I have for my conventional images, my slides, as well as my digital. So anybody works in the office, they can go to the file drawer and find the same system, same filing method, both for the slides and digital. So that's how it works. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions. I'm getting a warning that I still have a lag, so you might be writing questions and I'm not answering quickly, so that's okay. Let's keep going with settings. Now, the camera has very important settings when it comes to the top of the camera. And that has to do with, I still call it the motor drive, but it's basically the film advance. Wait, there's no film, it's digital, but you know what I'm talking about. That's single, continuous low, continuous high. Different camera bodies, manufacturers, models all label these differently, but basically it's taking one picture at a time, a couple pictures at a time, or total satisfaction, blast away, fill up the card in a second kind of, time. That's my favorite. Now, the difference in these settings, okay, two things happens. You can, especially on the Nikons, go into the menus and change how many photographs it will take in continuous low, continuous high, in case you want to like ration yourself. In my case, with the D850, for example, I put that in basically continuous low, so it's shooting a slower firing rate, so I'm not shooting a ton of pictures because that camera is mostly for my landscape work, okay, or video work. The D5, totally different. It's going to put on continuous high, and it can shoot up to 11 frames per second. I think this is the spec. It could be faster. I hate to tell you, I'm a little tired. Now, those numbers, okay, if you ever look at the instruction book, there are always little caveats, a little asterisk. So keep in mind that you're only going to get that super fast firing rate based on your shutter speed. So in other words, if your shutter speed on D5, you're shooting and you look inside the viewfinder and it says 1 second f1.4, you got to realize that if you're shooting, the shutter speed's 1 second. You can't shoot 11 frames per second, okay, because you're only going to take one picture in 1 second. So to get that faster firing rate, remember you have to have your shutter speed way up there, okay, way up there. So that's kind of key. But all the settings I have, remember that all my settings are on my website. You go to Moose's camera bag or Moose's locker, click on that. You'll see that there's all the current camera body settings are at the very top of the page. All the older cameras that I'm not currently shooting, those settings are at the bottom of the page. So that continuous high, I always set up all my settings, everything in the camera, everything is set up for two things. First and foremost is for all my stills work is for the fastest reaction time. So the camera is going to react the quickest and do its job as fast as I sit there and take a picture. The other settings are for video. And that's why I still like to kind of use the D5, because the D5, when you switch to video, all the settings you put in for the video stay with the video. When you turn the switch and you go to stills, all your settings are there for the stills. They are divorced. For other camera bodies, when you go back and forth, whatever you're shooting with stills will be there for the video and vice versa. So the D5 permits me to do, like on this project now, my main job is stills, and then I shoot a lot of what we call B-roll in the video. And Brent's role is to shoot all the video. So we have these, the workload, you could call it, is kind of sectioned off so we get as much coverage, which obviously we shot a terabyte of video in 2 days. We're getting a lot of coverage, but we're getting a lot of it. And that B-roll, that's just a term we use for, you could say for filler, but it's really important for driving the story forward. And that's why I love to have the D5. I can sit there and shoot stills, hit the switch, shoot video, hit the switch, and go back to stills. Not have to worry about modes and exposure, comp, and all that kind of stuff. It's very cool. So let me see if I can have, hopefully, David, I answered your question. I don't see any comeback, so let me know if I didn't answer your question correctly. Tammy says, do you ever have a scenario where B4 easy exposure compensation is beneficial? So Tammy, here's the thing with that. I really like the idea. The problem is I'm a guy who can't walk and chew gum. It kind of like when I'm shooting these cameras and I have gloves on and I hit a button and I turn a dial and all of a sudden my glove is not actually hitting the button I think it's hitting and depressing another button. All of a sudden all my settings go phew. So the easy exposure compensation allows you to just do it with the I think it's the sub-command dial. It might be the command dial, but sub-command dial. And since the way that I've kind of programmed myself after all these decades, I've tried using that and I've always messed myself up. So I still use the button on the top and I did the sub-command on the back and I sit there and I dial in exposure compensation. If you notice my settings though, the way that I do it, I actually change the rotation. So when I push that button, it goes to minus or plus. So I'm always doing minus, so it's set up so my thumb will go like this quickly and go to minus. So it's my hands actually have been programmed to hit buttons the way they, I'm used to them. And so it's that muscle memory that allows me to be so quick. And that's kind of the important things about these settings in your cameras is you can customize them to the way you shoot and the way you think so you can react quickly. And that's really important to the way you program that camera. Richard, 1, 2. What does that mean, buddy? I'm not, 1, 2. 3, 4? I'm not sure. Dennis, is 14-bit RAW rather than 12-bit RAW noticeable on, say, a D850? Well, okay, so here's Moose's take again, all right? So 14-bit, 12-bit. You gotta understand that if you knew nothing but put this as your image on the web, no one's gonna know the difference. If you're making prints, especially black and white prints, especially 24 by 30, yes, there's a huge difference between 14-bit and 12-bit. Those are the parameters. Big prints, black and white. If you're not doing that, probably doesn't make a big difference. With that said, I always love to tell the story about the guy from the very first Iron Man movie, and there's Tony Starr, he's up at the convention, and behind him is the shuttle assembly tower down there at Cape Canaveral. Well, that picture in the background, there's a guy literally on the tour, going through Cape Canaveral. Assembly building, took a picture, right? Kept on going, posted his picture on Flickr. They're desperate for some sort of background for that particular scene in Iron Man, right? Some guy was going through Flickr, saw that picture. Luckily, this guy was at that moment shooting TIFF. I don't know what camera he was using. It was an older camera. He was shooting TIFF, not JPEG. So because he got the biggest amount of information that camera could capture, he got a nice 4-figure paycheck. So the moral of the story is, I'm always going to shoot 14. I have no idea when that picture is going to be needed. Some big way, some big wow, and some big paycheck. So rather than scrimping now, because space is so inexpensive, I get the big files, and I always have. That's the way I work. Tammy, you're welcome. Hopefully that helped you. Joyce, thanks for coming by. No, wait. Mr. Peterson, I'm just Moose, guys, okay? Just Moose. But anyway, for the excellent course coming on called How to Use the Nikon D850. Well, thanks for watching my D850 course. I'm here to tell you, that was probably the most stressful, just totally, I thought I blew it class I've ever recorded. So I appreciate knowing that. 2 things are going on. So Brent and I were down here in Florida again working on the project. And it was one of these days where it was 108 degrees and there was 100% humidity. We grabbed all our stuff from the plane and we were just booking it over to Kelby. I get in the studio, pouring sweat. They turn off the fans so you can hear me talk. So I'm just in these lights baking. And then the teleprompter, for technical reasons, ended up being just an iPad. And an iPad has got my text about 20 feet away. Couldn't see it. So I'm going, please remember all these specs. So the fact that you got something out of that class and I was coherent and you didn't think I had been through a car wash, thank you. Let's see here. 12 frames per second on the D5. Yeah, it's 12. Thank you. It's 12 frames per second on the D5, but I think it, if you go to high-speed crop, it goes to 14. Yeah, I knew you'd fall for that, Richard. High-speed crop, just for you, buddy. Anyway, yes, got to have some fun somehow, right? Let's see here. Is it true you have benefits using a crop sensor instead of full frame when shooting wildlife? You talking about like a D500, which has a DX sensor, versus D5, which has an FX sensor? And I make that difference because you got to understand, everything since the very first camera has been technically a crop sensor, right? Because what are you cropping? You're not. I mean, you're getting the full image on that D500. It's not cropping into that sensor. And since the first camera was technically an 8x10 camera, everything since then has been a crop sensor. So I don't like that term. It's just not historically accurate, if nothing else. So what's happening with that DX sensor is, yes, you're getting 50% greater focal length out of your lens. And a really killer combo, as far as I'm concerned, would be the D500 with a 300 PF. I mean, for wildlife photography, especially birds, that has got to be like the home run of the century. You've got incredible image quality. You have great firing rate. You have a very inexpensive body in the D500, but great quality. And with that 300 millimeter, you get that 50% bump from that DX sensor. So you have a 450 millimeter that's physically this long, right? That long, okay, at f4. It's killer. That said, I still shoot the D5, okay? I still like the full FX sensor because that's just how I have arranged photographs for 40 years. Just the way my mind works. And I like to get close physically rather than use optics to isolate. Image size is not that important to me. Telling story is. So you have to decide which path you want to go and then follow it. Carol, smiley face. That's probably because I was being not very nice to my very dear friend Richard, who is so good to me. So, but hey, I haven't seen him for a week. I got to remind him about high-speed crop, right? Just gotta. Oh, good. I'm glad that made sense to you. Cool. As my friend that I'm teasing here, Harry, he likes to say I'm a wordsmith, and I think it's important that we use terms kind of correctly rather than just send them willy-nilly, because it's hard to keep moving the ball forward if we keep redefining terms. We've had three of the people we're working with here, three of the mechanics, are these really great kids from Italy who are learning English as they learn mechanics. They're really great kids, though. Just I love them to death. And they're trying to teach me some Italian, and I'm trying to teach them some California English. Okay? So, for example, they're working on replacing windows, right? Rectangular windows. And they kept saying, yeah, working in this angle here, or working in this angle here. And I said, no, it's corner. We call that a corner. They go, oh, corner. They love the word corner because angle can mean many different things. Same with photography. So I try to make sure that the terms are as clear as possible so we understand verbally what we're saying so we all can grow. Jeff, thank you. I appreciate the very kind words on both ends. I strive hard at my photography to sit there and grab heartstrings. So when you say I'm an inspiration, I appreciate that because it means I'm kind of hitting the mark that I'm heading towards. That's really important. So thank you very much. Sorry, Red. My eyes can't focus on your whole name, Red, but I'm going to call you Red if you don't mind. Moose, you use the 300 with the 1.4 or 1.7. Thank you. Well, right now I use it with the 1.4 3E. The reason is the 1.7 is still a 2, and the 3 is, the newer one is a 3. And the best reason I like it is because the vignetting is kind of really negated and gone. And that, just got to be old. The 1.7 still does a bit of a vignette. But otherwise, there's no real difference between the two. But I just prefer the 1.43E now. What is window in Italian? I don't know that. They're trying to teach me see you in the morning on a mani. And they're trying to say good day, buongiorno. And that's as far as I got. It's just part of the fun. Some of the stuff we're doing out there, it's really just point blank mundane stuff. Taking out hoses and clamps and arms and holes and wings and pulling stuff out. And they're like this for 20 minutes trying to get this nut they can't see, and they're ratcheting away. So part of the time in getting the video we want, we try to keep them engaged. And then, of course, it makes the task a little easier when there's conversation. So one of the things we do is kind of do that. So we tell stories and we try to learn each other's language. It's great fun, and I'm really sucks at it. They already learned sucks from me. So my wife will never forgive me for that one. But hey, um, let's see here. Any other questions? I'm seeing nothing at the moment. So I've talked about the drive settings and rate. Now, people always ask me about metering. And I want to talk about metering for a second so you understand how Moose does it. Because I kind of do it with 40 years of thinking about light. And that you have to understand. So I'm always using matrix metering. Okay, so matrix. That word itself, what does it mean? Well, it's actually huge. Okay, so in a nutshell, Nikon has very smart, wise, brilliantly looked at a lot of different photographs, and they looked at it analytically. How do the highlights, the shadows? How does Dave Black or Joe McNally or Moose Peterson or Dixie Dixon, any of the all the shooters? How do they, when they see this scene and there's this information here, highs, lows? What do they do for exposure? Do they dial exposure compensation? What do they do? They've taken all this information, they've put it into the computer. I'm really super simplifying this whole thing. And that information is actually in that chip. So when you look through the camera and it's giving you information, it says, okay, you wanted 1.4 and you're an aperture priority, you're going to shoot at 6400 shutter speed. That advice is coming from all this input in that metering in that computer, in that camera. And since I'm part of that system, I already know the camera kind of likes the way I do things. So then I look at the light. So the exposure comes from this looking at the light, not me looking through here, okay? I look through there, and I have memorized my exposure compensation. It's always going to be at minus a third. So I know if I just tick this left or right, I know I'm going minus 0.7 or going to 0. By one tick, I know what it is. So before I put this camera to my eye, okay, exposure compensation's already dialed in. That's because I know how I want to tell the story. So I think that's the most important thing to understand about metering, okay, is the fact that exposure equals emotion, okay? That's how you're going to bring out the mood, the drama, the power of that light is through metering. So matrix is going to give me the fastest information, okay? That information is advice. It's going to give you advice, either shutter speed or aperture, depending on aperture priority or shutter priority, okay? I don't use program. Rarely, the only time I use manual personally is when I'm shooting video, okay? So that matrix metering, the computer's going to give me the advice. I'm going to sit there and I know because of what I'm seeing. And today I was shooting a lot at minus 2 and 2.3, okay? Minus 2 1/3 stops because I really wanted to get some dramatic light and I wanted the shadows to go dark. I knew that camera, the 105-1.4, was going to deliver the images that I wanted. So that comes from this, doing this a lot, and then remembering what works, and remembering, more importantly, what fails. Okay, and that's really important. So that's how I deal with metering and metering setting. Okay, let's see here. Olive, will you ever try smaller formats like I assume you're talking about mirrorless. Okay, so first and foremost, I'm not sure why people don't understand. I shoot with a Nikon 1V3. It's Nikon mirrorless camera, okay? So there's a ton of it on my website. So I shoot with it, have it, and it's part of it. But here's the thing, and it's kind of hard to understand. I'm a guy, I like tools. And I like the tools that solve my visual problems. So in that case, I'm going to shoot things like the D5 with the 105-1.4 because only the D5 is going to give me that 105 focal length at 1.4 that's making me money, telling the story, grabbing heartstrings, okay? That's it. There's no other combination out there that's working for me. And that's what's really important, what's working for me. And that doesn't mean it's going to work for you. And that's what you need to take away from this. Everything I give you, all the advice, you have to sit there and take it in. And the advice that works for you, you need to embrace, make it yours. The rest of it, if it doesn't work for you, doesn't apply to you, isn't how you tell stories, forget it. Forget it. Okay? It's real simple. Next, I like the heft and weight of cameras. It allows me to get sharp images. I know people find it hard to believe, but I hand hold down at 1 second, and I know the camera's not going to move. The subject might move, but I'm not going to move. The camera's in my hands every day, and that weight works for me to get that rock solid photograph. I don't like tripods. For example, not to harp on it, but the project we're working on right now, being down on one knee, getting up, leaning against a strut, all those things I have to do to get the camera into place, tripod's not going to go. I've got to sit there and hold it. So that bulk of that camera, to me, is very important. So, I'm going to use a tool that works for me, whatever that tool is. And I'm going to rent that tool first. I'm going to make sure it works for me, and then I'll put it in my bag if it's going to pull its weight. Jeff, I hope this isn't too specific. I'm going to Banff National Park in spring. What wildlife should I expect to see, and how long of a lens will I need on my trip? I can't tell you, Jeff. I've been to Banff once. I was there for 4 days, and I shot landscape. So I don't have a specific answer. I would suggest strongly, first of all, you do your homework. What wildlife you think you're going to see? And then whatever it's going to be, let's say, for example, let's pick on bighorn sheep. They're up there. So figure out how physically big a bighorn sheep is. If it's the size like of your leisure chair in your home, then figure out how far away you think you're going to be from that bighorn sheep, and figure out what focal length you need to get the image size you want for that chair in your viewfinder, and figure it out for your own home and do your own homework. Figure it out. I don't have that answer. Not for you. I have it for myself, not for you. Personally, it's if I'm going after birds, it's the 800 millimeter lens. It's that simple. 800 millimeters. If I'm going after big game, it's 200 or 400, and that's just my particular style of going out and getting those photographs, come back and telling the story. Keep in mind that I don't do big image size. Okay, I like small images, critters in my frames, not big ones. I'm not an eyeball photographer. Okay, what is my favorite wide-angle lens? Whatever's on my camera. So Craig, it's a real common question. What is your favorite? I don't have one favorite, which is why I have a camera bag of tools. Again, for this, what I'm doing right now, I have the 8 to 15 zoom with me, because a 15 on that zoom is spectacular. It has much less curvature as far as I'm concerned than the 16. So there's some situations where it's a really small, little tight spot. I'll use that. I've also shot with the 14-24, and I've shot with the 24-1.4. That's the three wide angles I've used just in the last 48 hours. So those are the tools I like. They're all very specific. 24-1.4 is not going to do the same job as the 14-24. Even though they both have 24, one's 2.8, one's 1.4. You can look at my blog today. You can see why the 24-1.4 worked and why I love it, because that soft out of focus in the background for a wide angle lens, big impact visually, and you can't help but see one of the Italians there. You just can't help but see him. Olive, what is your blogging setup that you're using for the stream? The stream you're talking about right now is nothing to do with the blog, and it's just YouTube. That's hopefully that answers your question. Let's see here. It's getting time to wrap this up. And no one's had any setting questions. That cracks me up. But I appreciate you watching, but no one's asking settings. Let's see here. Which lens do you use when you do your airplane shots while you're flying? I think you're trying to ask what I use for my air-to-air photography. The first lens is normally the 70-200 f4, not the 2.8, the f4, and the second one would be the 24-70. Those are the two lenses I typically use. Thank you, Jeff. Ground floor, timing is live stream 20. There will be going. You think there's going to be 500 people here when there's live stream 20? I wonder, Jeff. That's a good question. But I appreciate the thought and the optimism. Oh, I guess I'm too old to handhold a full frame. I don't think so. There's a person right now. I'm not. It's watching. Who's a dear friend. Let's just say that we call her Auntie very endearing because, well, let's just say that she's quite a bit older than me, and she climbs the hills with me with a 600 f4 on a tripod, going after four-legged moose. So I think if you want to do it, anybody could do it. And she personally is an inspiration for me. Might be for you too. And right now I am totally blanking out on her website name. But if you go to my homepage down there on the bottom right corner on blogs that I follow, you'll see her blog there. Check it out. So it's coming up on it's 45 minutes. That's been a long one. So folks, I have I don't know, 7 cards to upload. I got some more batteries to deal with, cameras to clean, and I have sunrise coming around the corner. So I want to thank you all for showing up and being here, and I appreciate it. Remember that every click to tell your story. Have a good night, folks.